Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, July 13th, 2023, and today we are going to be talking about the state of New York and a brand new congressional map that we can expect to come our way over the next coming weeks. Now, in today, a decision from a New York State court, not the Supreme Court, but the New York State court here, decided in a 3-2 decision that the current congressional map must be redrawn, reversing a decision from the State Appeals Court, which serves as the State Supreme Court. They just use a different name, a State Appeals decision back from 2022 in a 4-3 decision that ruled a congressional gerrymander in the old New York map. This decision is in reverse from where it was previously. Democrats petitioned again after the 2022 midterm elections after they were absolutely demolished in the New York state elections. You can see in the congressional map here in the state of New York, Democrats lost a number of seats, a number of them that were supposedly competitive. In fact, every single district that was declared to be competitive by the New York Times went to the GOP. And even some in the Democratic column that were supposed to be very solid or at least likely in favor, for example, New York's 18th district, were decided by 1.3%, rather than other districts in the same column that were decided by 16, 10, and 12 points. The point is, New York had very bad showings for the Democratic Party, and not a single Republican-leaning district ended up in favor of the Democratic Party. So, what did they decide to do? They looked at the congressional map and realized that it was drawn in a way that wasn't as beneficial to them as they would have hoped. This is the map that was enacted following the Supreme Court's decision to strike down the gerrymander in the state of New York. Again, when I say Supreme Court and Appeals Court, I mean it as one and the same, and I mean it to only refer to the state of New York. Now, looking at our map here from 2022, this is the map that gave the Republican Party 3 seats in a safe position, 3 additional seats in a lean position, and 4 toss-up seats. Now, that gives the Democratic Party 12 safe seats, an additional 4 seats that are in the lean column, and again, 4 competitive seats. Now, at face value, you might think that this is a fair map, especially given that you generally see a breakdown of 67% to 33% in statewide elections, especially on the presidential level. And that would mean that in a normal type of year, Democrats and Republicans would fight out for those competitive seats. But at the baseline, Democrats would be at 16, Republicans would be at 7, and it's a fight for the seats in between them. Now, the Democratic Party, again, like I said, was absolutely demolished. They should have a baseline 16 seats, but actually only ended up winning 15 in the last election. For context, that means that Democrats not only lost every competitive seat, every Republican-leaning seat, but also one of their own seats that was expected to go their way. They originally passed a different map, though, a map that would have put them in a more favorable position in this midterm election. The map that they originally proposed gave the Democratic Party 13 safe seats, 7 lean seats, 2 competitive seats, 0 lean Republican seats, and 4 safe Republican seats, meaning that in a normal year, Republicans would be winning 4, Democrats would be winning 20, and they would leave 2 seats open for competitiveness. This was one of the most egregious and infamous gerrymanders that we have seen nationwide, which is exactly why the State Appeals Court rejected the new congressional map. The New York map was struck down, they ordered a special master to draw a new one, but then came problems. The problems came that the Chief Justice, the deciding vote, and Andrew Cuomo nominee retired from the court. And as a result, Kathy Hochul, the governor who was reelected in 2022, nominated somebody else, somebody who just so happened to be on the dissenting side of the last appeals decision. And now today, with this New York court ordering the new drawing of the congressional map from the select committee here that will eventually go into the state delegation, the state legislature, to draw the map. And you might be thinking, don't we have to wait for an appeal? Technically speaking, yes. But in the meantime, they will move on as if this is a done and solidified decision. They will start the redistricting process. So by the time the appeals court comes off of break, or maybe there will be an emergency session here, by the time they come off break in September, there will be a new congressional map ready to go should they decide to uphold this lower court's decision. But this puts them significantly, steps further towards a new gerrymander. As I said, this nominee from Kathy Hochul was one that actually was the second time that she tried to nominate somebody to the Chief Justice position. Her original candidate was somebody who was touted and pushed back against by the New York Democrats. He had a history of being pro-life, a history of voting for Republican values, or not voting, but ruling in favor of the GOP, and Democrats realized that this could be their grand opportunity at winning back House control. Yes, New York can make all the difference when the House is decided by just a couple of seats. Now, with Kathy Hochul's original nomination sunk and failed, she nominated somebody new, Rowan Wilson, who already served on the appeals court, who now became the first black appeals court chief justice, and is now going on to be, again, a dissenter from the last case, who will likely lead the court in the direction of a 4-3 decision just in favor of the Democratic Party. With this 4-3 decision from before, I honestly thought that this redistricting decision was going to be more in favor of the Democratic Party, largely because the Democrats had such an undeniable majority here. They would have needed 2 Democrats to turn away from them, but that's what happened. Same thing happened in Kansas when the state Supreme Court ultimately ruled against the Democratic Party in a redistricting case that, even though there wasn't legal language there, we know this was a gerrymander. The courts absolutely know that, but it's a partisanship thing. It's sort of in the way that Democrats see Republicans do it, and they try to fight back in the states that they can. And New York absolutely is one of those. There are a lot of implications with this new Court of Appeals, but most importantly, I would say, is the fact of this New York newly drawn redistricting map that we should expect to see over the next couple of weeks. The Democratic Party also now is going to have complete and total control. This isn't as if they just gave it to a different special master. No, what this does is reaffirm that the state legislature has it within their right in the Constitution to draw a new congressional map. And in a way, they're right. The legal argument behind it makes sense, but the laws that were written in place were meant to benefit the Democratic Party, because if you look at where we are currently, the Democrats have all but a supermajority in the state delegation. In fact, they do have a supermajority. I don't think as of recently, but they did for a while, and they have the ultimate upper hand when it comes down to the New York State Senate, the New York State House, the state legislature in totality, and it puts the Democrats in a really good position because they can redraw this map any way they want to. All they will have to do is reject the maps that will be proposed by the commission, and they know they're going to do that. It's just really a formality at this point to get a map put forward. They're going to reject it, and then if they reject it twice, they will be allowed to draw their own. So it'll be very interesting to see this sort of break down over time, this congressional map. It's proposed, it fails, and now the Democrats are saying, okay, now it's our turn, as described by the rules and system in place here. But it'll be so interesting because it means that we are getting a brand new congressional map, and one that will probably look very similar to this one, because the New York map that rejected the New York court that rejected the old one is no longer the current court. And yes, Kathy Hochul had to, by moving somebody else up to Chief Justice, nominate somebody again to this position who is largely expected to side with the dissenters from the last appeals decision, which means that Democrats could be on track to winning back House control solely and only through the state of New York. Because to put this into perspective, the fact is Democrats can win at a baseline in a normal election year, like the one coming up. I don't have to remind you, but there are better polls for Democrats in 2024 than we saw in 2022, which is a very good sign given that the last election was only lost by about 8 seats for the Democratic Party. 5 seats would have made all the difference had they gone in a different direction. But again, to show you just the extent of how bad this map is for the GOP, at the baseline, in a normal year, Democrats are winning 77% of the state delegation. 77% when they are, in fact, not 77% of the overall state populace. There's a problem here for the Democratic Party in terms of a double standard, but it's one that they're willing to live with because Republicans also have this existing. You take a look at states such as Florida, for instance, which is at least normally, not maybe in a Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio double whammy year for Democrats, but in a normal year is decided by a few points, but ultimately has about 70% of the delegation, 80% of the delegation being Republicans, violating the Voting Rights Act. I mean, there's a number of things I could go on and on about to say that both sides do it. So to remind you, 77%, but imagine Democrats win those 2 additional seats. That puts them, and reasonably speaking, they have won all the competitive seats in New York before. 2022 was largely seen as this fluke. 85% of the state delegation would be for the Democrats in a year where, quite frankly, Democrats could win just 50 to 60% of the vote. If these races go in the right direction, meaning that you just have New York at a baseline, you will find that the Democrats could reasonably be at minimum 77% of the state delegation, all the way up to 85%. And it also makes this map, because I think this is one they are going to absolutely put forward because they already did it once, just maybe with slight iterations. We will see here that a lot of these maps aren't just, Democrat +3. The lean districts here are drawn to be somewhat safe. Democrat +13, Democrat +12, Democrat +10, Democrat +6, Democrat +10, +8, +7, with Republican incumbents in some cases, and even the swing districts here. Democrat +4, Democrat +3. Do you see Republicans leading in any of the swing districts? No. In the newly drawn map, the one that was put forth by the special masters, you do. R+1, right? Or it's narrower, D+3, D+2, right? They draw it in a more competitive way. Republican +5, Republican +6, D+4, Republican +11. They draw the map fairer, fair, that's an accurate statement. But in terms of what the Democratic Party is likely to do, well, they probably are going to move forward with this gerrymander. That's the reality of American politics, fighting fire with fire, and sure, the whole world burns down, but at least one side of the aisle is going to come out on top, and both of them are scrambling to be that one side coming out on top. That's why North Carolina is trying to redraw the map 11-4. It's not because they care about the constituents in a way that means I want to redraw the map because I think this isn't adequate. No, 7-7 is absolutely the most fair scenario. 10-4 isn't, yet the Republicans will probably opt for 10-4 because that's how this game is played. That's how the game is won. That's how elections are won. And I know I'm speaking to the choir here. We all know this, at least, many of us. And, we took civics. We know that there is this general understanding that gerrymandering exists and it's bad and da-da-da-da. But what we also have to recognize is, sure, we can acknowledge all of that, but realize it's happening. And that's why we're addressing this New York situation and why I think Democrats are on track, as I've been saying for a while, to win back House control. 2022 was a wake-up call for me in the sense that the Republican Party I can no longer rely on to win in these close and competitive districts, as I maybe relied on them to do so in 2020, at least in hindsight. What I mean by that is I fully expected the Republican Party to do a lot better in 2022, and yet my expectations were not met at all. The Republicans did win back House control, but in a very narrow way, and it took a week to call the entire House. I am reminded of the 2010 election coverage where Republicans won House control back at 10 p.m. poll closing. I am reminded of the 2014 midterms where Republicans won over 230 seats in their favor, putting Democrats below 190 for the first time in years. I am reminded of the Republican Party's expectations and predictions for themselves in 2022 when Kevin McCarthy said we might be picking up anywhere from 40 to 50 to 60 seats in the House, all to have a net gain of 10, is embarrassing. It's a complete and total collapse for the GOP in terms of expectations, in terms of performance, and it didn't end there. We're going a bit off on a tangent here, but it is all to say that the Republican Party that might you have been able to rely on before for victories in states where it mattered. New York might have given them the upper hand in 2022, but with a new map, anything is possible. And with a presidential ballot, things get a lot better for the Democratic Party. The New York court's decision today reaffirmed the dissenters' decision from the appeals court back in 2022. It's not the end-all. The GOP will be petitioning and will be appealing this court decision to make it to the highest court, the state appeals court. There is still a chance that one of the justices that dissented before no longer dissents, might think the House is winnable without the state of New York and no longer sees a moral imperative on their end, politically wise, to go ahead and uphold this gerrymander. But that's a long shot. The Republicans are in control, and Democrats will try to do anything they can in order to win back House control, as the GOP will do anything they can to maintain it. See Ohio, see North Carolina. I'm interested to see, as time goes on, what we will find from the state of New York, what type of map will be drawn. My bet is on something very similar to the state legislative map, but I could also imagine the Democratic Party trying to go even further. If they know the court is on their side, they may draw a 23-3 map. It seems impossible, but with gerrymandering, anything is possible. And I've seen maps that circulated in the 2022 era where we talked about redistricting very heavily, and there were heavy considerations for potential gerrymanders, and people were able to find a way that made a 23-3 map still just as solid as a 22-4 map, one that would put Democrats in a very giddy place, in a very happy place to be going into the next election. But that all depends on the highest court in New York. which unfortunately for the Republican Party, looks to be a lot more favorable for Democrats now than they were just a year ago. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 24 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.